My name is Jordan Wilson, 30 years old and a construction manager from Boston. Every Christmas Eve at my parents' mansion feels like walking into a designer catalog. Perfect. Except for one thing: the obvious favoritism toward my sister Katherine. For 28 years, I've watched her receive the lion's share of everything. Attention, praise, and especially gifts. This year seemed no different when Dad handed her keys to a fully paid vacation home. Then Mom slid a simple folded letter across the table to me. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a like and subscribe, because this Christmas story changed my family forever. I've been working in construction since I was 16 years old. Started as a laborer, hauling materials and cleaning sites after school, working weekends while other kids were hanging out at the mall or playing video games. That wasn't an option for me. Not because we were poor, far from it, but because my father believed I needed to develop character and understand the value of hard work. My sister Katherine never received the same lecture. After high school, I struggled through community college while working full-time. 6 years of night classes, weekend studies, and falling asleep over textbooks after 12-hour shifts. No spring breaks in Cancun. No study abroad in Europe. No parent-funded apartment near campus. Just work, study, sleep, repeat. By the time I earned my construction management degree, I already had years of practical experience that put me ahead of my classmates. Today, I manage major commercial projects across Massachusetts. High-rises, hospital expansions, municipal building structures that will stand for generations. I take pride in what I do. My hands might not get as dirty these days, but I still walk every inch of my sites, know every subcontractor by name, and can spot a problem before it becomes a disaster. Despite my success, I still live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, paid for with my own sweat and determination. I've never been married. Had a few serious relationships, but nothing stuck. Currently, I've been dating Jennifer for about 7 months. She's a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that lights up a room. Jennifer couldn't join us for Christmas this year. She flies to Colorado every December to be with her family. Probably for the best, considering how things turned out. My personality has always been practical, no nonsense. I don't waste words or money. I wear Timberland boots until they fall apart. Drive the same Ford truck I bought 8 years ago. Take my coffee black. The guys on my sites respect me because I don't ask for anything I wouldn't do myself. That's who I am. Straightforward, hardworking, honest. Katherine, my younger sister by 2 years, couldn't be more different. She breezed through private schools with straight A's, never held a summer job, and graduated from Harvard Law with honors. Now she works at Bennett & Frost, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms, specializing in corporate mergers and acquisitions. Her husband Thomas is a neurosurgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. They live in a brownstone in Beacon Hill, vacation twice a year in places most people only see in magazines, and seem to exist in a different universe than mine. Growing up, Katherine was clearly the favorite. When she made honor roll, our parents threw parties. When I made honor roll, which happened more often than they remember, I got a good job at dinner. When Katherine won debate tournaments, Dad took her for shopping sprees. When I won carpentry competitions in high school, I got a firm handshake. The pattern was consistent and unmistakable. The gap only widened as we grew older. Our parents paid every cent of Katherine's education: prep school, undergraduate at Yale, Harvard Law, easily $500,000. For my education, they gave me $5,000 when I started community college and told me to figure out the rest. When Katherine got married 3 years ago, they spent over $100,000 on the wedding. When I graduated college, they gave me a watch. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about my life. I'm proud of what I've built. But the disparity was impossible to ignore, especially since neither of my parents came from privilege. Dad, Harold Wilson, built his commercial real estate development company from nothing after dropping out of college. Started with small residential renovations, worked his way up to small commercial properties, and eventually grew into one of the largest commercial developers in New England. His company, Wilson Development, now handles projects worth hundreds of millions. Mom, Eleanor Wilson, came from old Boston money, but was cut off when she married Dad against her family's wishes. They reconciled years later, but she never forgot those early struggles. She's refined, particular about appearances, and deeply invested in maintaining certain social connections. Katherine fits perfectly into that world. I never did. Christmas at the Wilson household has always been an elaborate affair. Mom decorates like she's competing for a magazine cover. Professional florists, imported ornaments, color-coordinated everything. Dinner is catered by a renowned chef. Gifts are wrapped in custom paper with handmade bows. It's beautiful but feels more like a production than a family celebration. The gift disparity was always most obvious at Christmas. Last year, Katherine received a diamond tennis bracelet and a week at a spa in Switzerland. I got a leather portfolio and a tie. The year before, she got a new Mercedes. I got a set of golf clubs, despite rarely playing golf. The pattern was so consistent, it became almost comical. I'd sit there with my practical gift, watching Katherine squeal over something extravagant. Then we'd all pretend this was perfectly normal. This year's invitation seemed different. Dad called personally unusual, since Mom typically handles social arrangements. He emphasized how important it was that I attend, even offering to reschedule if I had work conflicts. Something in his voice made me curious. He sounded almost nervous, which isn't like my father. Dad doesn't do nervous. He's the kind of man who makes million-dollar decisions without blinking. Whatever was happening this Christmas, it was significant enough to rattle him. I arrived at my parents' mansion in Wellesley at exactly 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Their house sits on 3 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, a 20,000-square-foot Georgian colonial, with columns, fountains, and a circular driveway that could fit 20 cars. Tonight, the property was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Thousands of white lights draped over every tree, professional light projections on the facade, and a 15-foot Norwegian spruce, visible through the massive front windows. The housekeeper, Maria, greeted me at the door. She's worked for my parents for 20 years, and always treats me with a warmth that feels more genuine than what I get from my actual family. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Jordan," she said, taking my coat. "Your parents are in the main living room." I handed her the modest gifts I'd brought: a cashmere scarf for Mom, a rare bourbon for Dad, and a spa gift card for Katherine. Nothing extravagant, but thoughtful and within my budget. Maria noticed me straightening my tie and gave me an encouraging smile. "You look very handsome tonight," she whispered. Something in her expression suggested she knew something I didn't. The main living room was a showcase of holiday excess. A 20-foot Christmas tree, dripped with crystal ornaments and antique decorations. A fire roared in the marble fireplace, beneath garlands of fresh pine. The furniture had been rearranged to accommodate extra seating, and a bartender stood ready behind a temporary bar. My parents were discussing something in hushed tones, but stopped abruptly when I entered. "Jordan." Mom air-kissed both my cheeks, careful not to disturb her perfect makeup. At 62, Eleanor Wilson was still striking slim, elegant, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and impeccable taste in clothing. Tonight, she wore a red designer dress with subtle Christmas-themed jewelry. "Darling, you made it. We were just saying how punctual you always are." Dad approached with a glass of scotch already poured for me. Harold Wilson, 65, still maintained the commanding presence that helped build his empire. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. He'd kept himself fit despite the heart scare last year that they'd downplayed to me. "Son." His handshake was firm. "Glad you're here. Drink?" I accepted the scotch, noting it was the expensive kind he usually reserved for business associates. "Thanks, Dad. Place looks amazing. As always. Your mother's doing." You know how she gets at Christmas." An awkward silence fell. We'd exhausted our standard greeting script, and now the real conversation should begin. But neither seemed to know where to start. Mom fussed with an already perfect flower arrangement. Dad checked his watch. "Katherine and Thomas running late?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My sister was constitutionally incapable of arriving on time to family functions. "They texted they're 15 minutes away," Mom replied. "Thomas had an emergency surgery this morning. Apparently saved someone's life on Christmas Eve." "Isn't that wonderful?" "Very impressive," I agreed, though I wondered if my managing a $100 million construction project ahead of schedule would ever merit the same enthusiasm. We made stilted small talk about weather, Boston traffic, and Mom's charity work until the sound of tires on gravel announced my sister's arrival. Katherine and Thomas made their entrance 30 minutes later than promised. But my parents' irritation vanished the moment they appeared. Katherine swept in wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her dark hair arranged in an elegant updo that highlighted diamond earrings. Thomas followed in a tailored suit that screamed money without trying too hard. They brought expensive gifts and apologies that sounded rehearsed. "Sorry we're late." Katherine kissed Mom, then Dad. "Thomas literally saved a man's life this morning." And then, there was so much traffic. "The important thing is you're here now," Mom beamed. "Jordan's been waiting." Katherine turned to me as if just noticing my existence. "Oh, Jordan, Merry Christmas." Her hug was brief, perfunctory. "How's work? Still building things?" "Still building things," I confirmed. "Congratulations on the Harrington merger." Dad mentioned it was a big win for your firm. "It was huge," she brightened, always ready to discuss her accomplishments. 14-hour days for months, but worth it. We celebrated with a weekend in Paris. The conversation quickly turned to Katherine's recent cases, Thomas's surgical innovations, their fall trip to the Maldives, and Katherine's plans to speak at a law conference in London. I sipped my scotch and nodded at appropriate intervals, occasionally catching Maria's sympathetic glance as she passed with trays of hors d'oeuvre. Throughout the pre-dinner socializing, I noticed Dad seemed distracted, checking his watch and exchanging meaningful glances with Mom. Katherine was too absorbed in her own stories to notice, but something was definitely off. Mom kept touching her necklace, a nervous habit she'd had for years, and twice I caught her studying my reaction to the conversation. Dinner was served at 8 in the formal dining room. The massive mahogany table gleamed under candlelight, set with the Limoges china and sterling silver flatware that only appeared on special occasions. Maria and 2 hired servers presented course after course of gourmet food: butter-poached lobster, beef Wellington, truffle risotto, and vegetables I couldn't name arranged, like artwork on oversized plates. Dad stood to offer a toast once we were all seated, raising his crystal wineglass. "To family," he began, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he typically used in boardrooms. "To Katherine and her remarkable year, the Harrington merger was indeed impressive, and we couldn't be prouder of your accomplishments at the firm." Katherine beamed, lifting her glass. "And to Jordan," Dad continued, causing me to look up in surprise, "whose work ethic and integrity continue to impress everyone who works with him." I nearly choked on my wine. Dad rarely acknowledged my work, let alone praised it publicly. Something was definitely strange about tonight. As dinner progressed, I caught more odd behaviors. Dad, normally a commanding presence who dominated conversation, seemed almost subdued. Mom kept steering discussions away from certain topics, particularly anything related to the family business. Katherine, oblivious to the undercurrents, continued regaling us with stories of legal brilliance and social conquests. By the time dessert was served, a complicated chocolate construction that seemed too artistic to eat, the tension was palpable. Dad and Mom exchanged another look, and Mom nodded slightly. Whatever they were planning, The time was approaching. "Shall we move to the living room for gifts?" Mom suggested as the dessert plates were cleared. I think we're all eager for the evening's main event. We relocated to the living room, where the enormous Christmas tree now had presents arranged beneath it, color-coordinated. Of course, Katherine immediately sat in the prime position, the armchair nearest the tree, with Thomas perched on its arm. I took a seat on the sofa opposite, while Mom and Dad remained standing, unusually formal. "As you know," Dad began, "your mother and I believe Christmas is a time for meaningful gifts. This year, we've put particular thought into what each of you should receive." The gift exchange followed the familiar pattern. Thomas received an expensive watch. I opened practical items, a high-end winter coat, a gift certificate to my favorite steakhouse, and a new leather briefcase. Nice gifts, certainly, but nothing extraordinary. Katherine, meanwhile, accumulated a growing pile of designer items, jewelry, and spa packages. With each gift Katherine opened, her excitement grew, while I maintained my practiced smile of appreciation for my own presence. Thomas caught my eye once and gave a slight shrug, as if acknowledging the disparity but unwilling to comment. Then Dad cleared his throat, signaling a shift in the proceedings. "We have one final gift for each of you. These are special and reflect our thoughts about the future of this family." Mom moved to Dad's side as he continued. "Katherine, your mother and I have watched you build an impressive career in life. You've accomplished everything we hoped you would, which is why we wanted to give you something truly special this year." Dad nodded to Mom, who retrieved a large envelope from behind the tree, handing it to Katherine with a flourish. "This is something we've been planning for quite some time." Katherine opened the envelope and pulled out glossy photographs and documents, her eyes widening. "Is this?" "A vacation home on Martha's Vineyard," Dad confirmed. 5 bedrooms. Oceanfront. Fully furnished and paid for. The deed is in your name." Katherine's squeal of delight was so high-pitched I'm surprised it didn't shatter the crystal. She jumped up, photographs clutched in her hands, showing Thomas the images of a sprawling, shingled mansion on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. "It's the Henderson property, the one I've loved since we were children." She hugged both parents, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe you did this. It must have cost—" "Don't worry about the cost," Dad interrupted. "You deserve it." Thomas looked genuinely shocked at the extravagance. "This is incredibly generous," he said, examining the property documents with the surprise of someone who, despite his own wealth, wasn't accustomed to receiving multi-million-dollar gifts. I sat quietly, offering congratulations while inwardly calculating what a vacation home on Martha's Vineyard must have cost. 7 million? 8? More? The disparity had never been so blatant. I wasn't expecting anything close to equivalent, but the contrast was jarring. I began mentally planning my exit strategy, how soon I could politely leave, without seeming ungrateful for my new coat and briefcase. Then I noticed Mom and Dad exchange another of those strange glances. Dad nodded slightly, and Mom reached behind a sofa cushion, retrieving a simple white envelope. Nothing fancy. No bow. No special wrapping. Just my name written in Dad's distinctive handwriting. "Jordan," Mom said, her voice oddly formal. "This is for you." The room fell quiet as she handed me the envelope. Katherine was still examining her property photos, but Thomas watched with unexpected interest. Something in the atmosphere had shifted. "Should I open it now?" I asked, confused by the solemnity. "Yes," Dad said firmly. "And we'd like you to read it aloud." I looked down at the plain white envelope in my hands, turning it over once before carefully breaking the seal. The paper inside was my father's personal stationery heavyweight cream paper with a subtle watermark and his initials embossed at the top. The letter was typed, but signed in his bold handwriting. Katherine glanced up from her vacation home photos, a satisfied smile playing on her lips as she watched me. She probably assumed it was a token gesture, perhaps a modest bonus check, or a timeshare week at some lesser vacation spot. Her expression held the benevolent superiority of someone who has already won and can afford to be gracious. I unfolded the letter and cleared my throat, feeling strangely nervous. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Dear Jordan, I began reading aloud. As you know, I built Wilson Development from nothing over 40 years ago. What you may not know is that for the past 5 years, I have been considering my legacy and the future of the company. I paused, glancing up at Dad, who nodded for me to continue. After careful consideration and countless discussions with your mother, I have made my decision regarding succession at Wilson Development. Effective upon my retirement next year, you, Jordan Harold Wilson, will assume full ownership and control of Wilson Development and all its subsidiaries. My voice faltered. I stared at the words, certain I'd misread. Katherine's smile froze, then began to fade at the edges. Continue, please, Dad said quietly. I swallowed hard and read on. The company's portfolio currently includes 47 commercial properties across New England, development rights to 12 future projects, and liquid assets of approximately $75 million. The estimated total value of Wilson Development and its holdings exceeds $1 billion. The word billion hung in the air like a thunderclap. Katherine's smile had completely vanished now, replaced by a look of confusion that was quickly morphing into something darker. Your background in construction management, combined with your integrity, work ethic, and understanding of the business from the ground up, makes you uniquely qualified to lead Wilson Development into the future. You have earned this through years of dedication and hard work, often without recognition or reward. My hands were shaking slightly now. I looked up at my parents, searching for some explanation, but they simply motioned for me to finish the letter. This decision was not made lightly or recently. In fact, your mother and I determined this course of action many years ago, when it became clear which of our children possessed the character and capability to steward the family business. I glanced at Katherine, whose face had drained of color. Her knuckles were white, where she gripped the vacation home photos. Your sister has been aware of our intentions since she began law school. Katherine agreed that in exchange for our financial support throughout her education, wedding, and lifestyle, culminating in the vacation property she receives today, she would not contest our decision regarding the company. The documentation of this agreement is enclosed with this letter. Thomas shifted uncomfortably beside Katherine, whose expression had transformed completely. The vacation home photos slipped from her fingers, scattering across the floor. I have always believed that true wealth is earned, not given. While we may not have always shown it in ways you could recognize, your mother and I have watched your career with immense pride. You built yourself without handouts or special treatment, and that revealed your character. I had to stop for a moment, overcome by emotions I couldn't immediately identify. Was this real? Had they planned this all along? Beginning January 2nd, you will join me at headquarters to begin the transition process. The company attorneys have prepared all necessary documentation, which will be signed at that time. Katherine made a small, strangled sound. Your mother and I look forward to watching you lead Wilson Development with the same dedication you've shown in every aspect of your life. We have complete faith in you, son. I lowered the letter, meeting my father's gaze. Dad, I don't understand. This company is your life's work. You built it from nothing, and now it's yours, he said simply. If you want it. Katherine stood abruptly, vacation home documents forgotten on the floor. This has to be a joke. Tell me this is some kind of sick Christmas prank. Mom stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. It's not a joke, Katherine. This has been the plan for many years. Many years? Katherine's voice rose. You never said anything about giving Jordan the entire company. We discussed this when you started at Harvard Law, Dad replied calmly. You agreed to this arrangement. The vacation home today was the final part of our agreement with you. Katherine's face flushed red. I never thought you'd actually go through with it. I assumed you'd change your mind when you saw how successful I've become. Thomas placed a cautioning hand on Katherine's arm, which she immediately shrugged off. I'm an attorney at one of the top firms in Boston, she continued, voice rising. I work with corporations worth billions every day. Jordan builds things. He's a glorified contractor. That's exactly why he's the right choice, Dad said firmly. Jordan understands the business from the foundation up. He knows construction, materials, contractors, permitting everything that makes our business function. You know corporate law, which we can hire. I sat silently, still processing this revelation. The family business. My father's legacy. $1 billion. It was too much to comprehend. Katherine turned to me, eyes narrowing. You must have known about this. You must have been working behind my back, convincing them. I had no idea, I interrupted, finding my voice. None whatsoever. It's true, Mom confirmed. We never told Jordan about our plans until this moment. We wanted to be sure. Sure of what? Katherine demanded. That he wouldn't be changed by the prospect of inheritance, Dad said. That he would build his own path regardless of what might come from us. And he has. Katherine's face contorted with anger. So this was all a test? My entire life. You've given me everything. And it was actually setting me up to get nothing? Not nothing, Dad corrected. You've received over $2 million in education, support, and gifts over the years, culminating in the vacation property today. That home is worth $7.5 million, Katherine. Hardly nothing. The room fell silent as the magnitude of what was happening settled over us all. Thomas looked at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. Mom stood resolute beside Dad. Katherine stared at me with undisguised hatred, and I sat there, still holding the letter that had just changed everything. Let me see that agreement, Katherine demanded, striding across the room and snatching the additional papers from my hands before I could respond. She scanned the document, legal training, evident in the way her eyes darted across the pages. Thomas moved to read over her shoulder, his expression shifting from embarrassment to surprise. You signed this? He asked Katherine quietly. She ignored him, continuing to flip through the pages with increasing agitation. This can't be legally binding. I signed this 8 years ago when I was 20. I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. Dad sighed. You were a first-year law student at Harvard, Katherine. You understood exactly what you were signing. We reviewed it with our attorneys and yours. You even negotiated better terms. Better terms? I echoed, still trying to catch up. Mom nodded. Katherine originally was offered a one-time payment upon your father's retirement. She countered by requesting ongoing support through law school, help with her wedding, the down payment on your Beacon Hill home, and ultimately, the Martha's Vineyard property. I turned to Katherine, whose face was now flushed with a combination of anger and embarrassment. You knew about this for 8 years? While I was working 60-hour weeks? And living in a one-bedroom apartment? Don't act so righteous, Katherine snapped. I never thought Dad would actually go through with this. It was supposed to be a formality to make him feel better about his succession planning. Everyone knows family businesses go to the most qualified person, which is precisely why Jordan will be taking over. Dad interjected, his voice hardening. Qualification isn't measured solely by degrees, Katherine. It's demonstrated through character, judgment, and understanding of the business. I'm on track to make partner at Bennett and Frost in 2 years, Katherine argued. I've handled mergers worth billions. I understand business better than anyone in this room. You understand paperwork, Dad replied. Jordan understands people, materials, timelines, building codes, labor relations, the actual components that make our company function. He spent 15 years learning every aspect of construction from the ground up. So hire him as a project manager. Give him a division to run if you want to play charity. But the company? The entire company? Katherine's voice had taken on a shrill quality I hadn't heard since we were teenagers. This is insane. Mom, you can't possibly agree with this. Mom stepped forward, surprising me with her firmness. This decision was made jointly. Katherine, I've watched both my children grow into the people they were meant to become. Jordan has shown consistent integrity, humility, and work ethic. These are the qualities needed to lead Wilson development. Katherine laughed bitterly. Integrity? Humility? Those don't build billion-dollar companies. Ambition does. Vision does. Connections do. I have all of those things, and yet you never once expressed interest in the family business until this moment, Dad observed. In 15 years, you've never asked about our projects, never visited a construction site, never inquired about our financial statements or growth strategy, because I was busy building my own career like you told me to. Exactly, Dad nodded. You built your path. Jordan built his, and his path has prepared him for this responsibility. Thomas finally spoke up, his voice measured. Katherine, perhaps we should discuss this privately. He turned to my parents. This is clearly a shock. Maybe we all need time to process. There's nothing to process, Katherine retorted. This is a mistake that needs to be corrected immediately. I found myself rising to my feet, something shifting inside me. Years of accepting second place, of swallowing disappointment, of working twice as hard for half the recognition something had finally snapped. No, Katherine. For once, this isn't about you. My voice was steady, surprising even myself. All my life, I've watched you receive everything. While I worked for scraps of acknowledgement, I never complained. I built my own way because that's what Dad taught me to do. If he believes I'm the right person to lead the company, I'm not going to let you throw another tantrum and change his mind. Katherine stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. In 15 years, I had never directly challenged her. You have no idea what you're getting into, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Running a billion-dollar company isn't like managing a construction site. You're completely out of your depth. Maybe, I acknowledged. But I can learn. That's what I've always done. This isn't fair, Katherine insisted, turning back to our parents. I'm the one with the Harvard degree. I'm the one who understands corporate structure and finance. And Jordan is the one who understands our business. Dad replied firmly. Katherine, this decision is final. Katherine's composure finally shattered completely. You can't do this. I've worked my entire life to be perfect for you both. I went to the schools you wanted, pursued the career you pushed me toward, married someone from the right family, everything you ever asked. Mom flinched at this outburst, a flash of guilt crossing her face. And now you're giving everything to Jordan? Because he can read a blueprint and pour concrete? This is insane. Katherine's voice had risen to a shout. He doesn't even dress properly for Christmas dinner. Look at him. He bought his suit off the rack. Thomas placed his hand on Katherine's shoulder. Katie. That's enough. She shrugged him off violently. Don't tell me that's enough. You don't understand what's happening here. Actually, I think I do. Thomas said quietly. And I think you need to calm down before you say something you'll regret. Katherine whirled to face him. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of handling this like adults, he replied evenly. This isn't how we resolve family matters. There's nothing to resolve, Dad interjected. The decision is made. The documents are prepared. Jordan will begin training after the new year. And I'll transition leadership over the coming year. Katherine turned back to me, her eyes narrowing. You must have been planning this for years, working your way into his good graces, playing the humble, hardworking son while I was away building an actual career. I shook my head. I had no idea, Katherine. None. This is as much a shock to me as it is to you. Liar, she spat. Nobody gets handed a billion-dollar company as a surprise Christmas gift. Apparently, I just did, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. And if Dad believes I can do this, I'm going to prove him right. Katherine's face contorted with rage. You have no idea what you're doing. You'll run the company into the ground within a year. Dad's legacy will be ashes because he made this ridiculous decision. Dad stepped between us. That's enough, Katherine. Your behavior right now is precisely why we made this decision years ago. My behavior? Katherine's laugh was brittle and sharp. You drop a bomb like this on Christmas Eve, and you're judging my behavior? You've just told me that for 8 years you've been planning to give Jordan everything while stringing me along. Dad's expression hardened. No one strung you along. You made an agreement. You received exactly what was promised. And it's been substantial. The vineyard house alone is worth— I don't care about the house, Katherine shouted, though she still clutched the property papers in her hand. I care about what it represents. You're cutting me out of my birthright. Wilson Development isn't a monarchy, Dad replied. It's a business that needs the right leader. Katherine turned to Mom. Changing tactics. Mom, please. You know this is wrong. I'm your daughter. Your only daughter. How can you let him do this to me? Mom stood firm beside Dad. This isn't being done to you, Katherine. This is about what's best for the company your father built. We love you both equally, but you and Jordan have different strengths. Jordan's align with what the company needs. Katherine's expression turned calculating. If this is about money, you could give us both shares. 50-50. That would be the fair thing to do. Dad shook his head. This isn't about fair. It's about right. A company needs one vision, one leader. Splitting ownership would create constant conflict, especially given your reaction tonight. I'm reacting this way because you blindsided me. No, I said quietly. You're reacting this way because for once, you didn't get everything you wanted. Katherine spun toward me. You have no right to judge me. You have no idea what it's been like. The pressure, the expectations. The pressure, I echoed in disbelief. You've had everything handed to you your entire life. College paid for, law school paid for, down payment on your house. The fanciest wedding Boston has seen in a decade. Vacations, cars, jewelry, and now a $7.5 million vacation home. Tell me more about this terrible pressure you've been under. Thomas stepped forward again. I think we all need to take a breath. Katherine rounded on him. Did you know about this? Is that why you've been acting strange all evening? Thomas hesitated, just long enough for everyone to notice. You did know. Katherine backed away from him. For how long? Your father mentioned something last month, Thomas admitted reluctantly. He wanted to be sure we understood the vacation home was the final settlement, according to your agreement. And you didn't tell me? Katherine's voice rose again. My own husband kept this from me? Your father asked me not to spoil the Christmas announcement, Thomas explained, clearly uncomfortable. I assumed you knew about the overall arrangement, since you signed the agreement. I never thought they'd actually go through with it, Katherine repeated, increasingly agitated. It was supposed to be a formality. Dad was supposed to realize I'm the obvious choice to run the company. Based on what? Dad asked quietly. You've shown zero interest in Wilson Development until this moment. You've never asked a single question about how we operate, our projects, our challenges, our employees. Jordan, without any expectation of inheritance, has spent 15 years learning every aspect of construction and management. Because that's all he could do, Katherine shot back. He barely got through community college. I went to Harvard, and yet here we are, Dad said. Jordan built expertise in our industry. You built expertise in a different field. We're proud of both of you. But only one of you is qualified to lead Wilson Development. Katherine turned to me again, her eyes burning with resentment. You can't possibly handle this. You manage construction crews. Running a billion-dollar company requires financial acumen, corporate strategy, legal knowledge, all things we can hire, Dad interrupted. What we can't hire is character, judgment, and fundamental understanding of our business. This is a mistake, Katherine insisted. A horrible mistake you'll regret when the company starts failing under his leadership. Dad's patience was visibly wearing thin. Katherine, I built this company from nothing. Do you really think I would entrust it to someone I didn't believe could succeed? You're not thinking clearly, Katherine argued. You've romanticized Jordan's blue-collar story. The hardworking son who got his hands dirty. It makes a nice narrative, but it doesn't translate to executive leadership. Actually, it does, Dad countered. Jordan has managed projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars, coordinating dozens of subcontractors, hundreds of workers, complex permitting processes, and tight deadlines. He's demonstrated leadership every day for years. Katherine grabbed her purse. This conversation is pointless. You've clearly made up your mind, regardless of logic or fairness. Thomas, we're leaving. Thomas looked torn, glancing between Katherine and my parents. Katherine, maybe we should now, Thomas. Her tone left no room for argument. As Katherine stormed toward the door, Mom called after her. Katherine, please don't leave like this. It's Christmas Eve. Katherine paused, turning back with ice in her eyes. Christmas is canceled, along with any illusion that this is a family that cares about fairness or each other. Thomas gave an apologetic look to my parents. I'm sorry. She's upset. We'll talk when things calm down. They left without another word, the front door slamming with enough force to rattle the ornaments on the Christmas tree. The silence that followed was deafening. Maria appeared briefly in the doorway, concern evident on her face, but retreated when Dad shook his head slightly. I sank back onto the sofa, the letter still in my hand. Well, that went about as well as could be expected. Dad moved to the bar and poured 3 glasses of scotch, handing one to Mom and one to me before taking a long sip from his own. Actually, it went exactly as we expected. You knew she'd react like this? Mom nodded, taking a seat beside me. It's why we waited until tonight. We wanted to give her the vacation house first, have witnesses to the agreement being fulfilled, and do it in a setting where she'd be less likely to completely lose control. Though she came close, Dad added, settling into his armchair. Why didn't you tell me any of this? I asked. All these years, I thought, that we favored Katherine? Mom finished. In some ways, we did. But not for the reasons you think. Dad leaned forward. Jordan, I was hardest on you because I saw myself in you. The same drive, the same understanding of what it means to build something real. I pushed you because I knew what you were capable of becoming. Meanwhile, we gave Katherine everything because we recognized early on that she needed external validation, Mom explained. The gifts, the praise, the financial support, they were compensation for what she lacked internally. And you never thought to just tell me any of this? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Would you have believed us? Dad asked. Or would you have thought we were just trying to make you feel better about the disparity? He had a point. I probably wouldn't have believed them. There's something else you should know, Dad continued, his expression growing serious. My health issues last year were more significant than we let on. I had a mild heart attack, and the doctors have been clear that I need to reduce stress. Succession planning became urgent. The revelation hit me hard. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want your concern or pity. I wanted to observe you objectively for 1 more year, to be absolutely certain of my decision. He took another sip of scotch. And everything I've seen has confirmed that you're ready for this responsibility. But $1 billion? The entire company? Dad, this is your life's work. And now it will be yours, he said simply. Unless you don't want it. The question hung in the air. Did I want this? The responsibility of hundreds of employees, dozens of properties, projects worth millions. It was overwhelming. I need time to process this. I admitted. You'll have time, Mom assured me. The transition will take a year. You'll work alongside your father, learning everything you need to know. Dad nodded. The letter mentioned January 2nd. That's when we'll begin. But tonight, I just needed to know. Are you willing to accept this responsibility? I looked at the letter again, considering everything it represented. The company, the legacy, the trust my father was placing in me. And somewhere beneath all that, a validation I'd been seeking my entire life. Yes, I said finally. I'm willing to try. Dad's expression softened with relief. That's all I needed to hear. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I returned to my apartment in Somerville, the letter locked in my desk drawer, still half convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. Katherine had called 17 times, leaving increasingly hostile voicemails that ranged from threats of legal action to tearful recriminations. I listened to each one, but didn't call back. What was there to say? On December 27th, I finally called Jennifer in Colorado. We'd texted on Christmas, but I hadn't mentioned anything about what happened. Some news needed to be delivered voice to voice. You're joking, she said after I explained. Your dad is giving you his entire company? The one that owns half of Boston's skyline? Not half, I corrected. Maybe a quarter. And not just Boston. Properties all over New England. Jordan, that's. I don't even have words. How are you feeling? It was the first time anyone had asked. My parents had been focused on the practicalities, and Katherine had been focused on herself. Overwhelmed, I admitted. Shocked, grateful, terrified, all of it at once. That sounds about right. Jennifer laughed softly. This is life-changing. That's what scares me. I don't want it to change me. It won't, she said with a certainty that warmed me. You're the most grounded person I know. If anyone can handle sudden wealth without losing themselves, it's you. We talked for hours, Jennifer asking questions no one else had thought to ask. Not about the money or the business, but about me. How I felt about my relationship with my parents now. What this might mean for my relationship with Katherine. Whether I truly wanted this responsibility. By the time we hung up, I felt steadier. Jennifer had a way of cutting through confusion to what mattered. She promised to be back in Boston for New Year's Eve, and I found myself counting the days. On January 2nd, I arrived at Wilson Development Headquarters in downtown Boston. The 20-story building with the company name emblazoned across the top had always been Dad's office to me. Now I was arriving as the future owner. The security guard greeted me by name. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Your father is expecting you in the executive suite. The elevator required a special key for the top floor. As I rode up, I straightened my tie and took deep breaths. This was really happening. Dad was waiting in the reception area, dressed in his usual impeccable suit. Right on time, he nodded approvingly. Ready for day one? As I'll ever be, I replied. Good. First, let's introduce you to the executive team. They're waiting in the conference room. I'd expected this to be a private orientation day with Dad, but apparently we were diving straight in. The large conference room held 8 people, men and women in business attire, who rose when we entered. Dad introduced each one: the CFO, the general counsel, the heads of acquisitions, property management, development, human resources, marketing, and operations. Everyone. This is my son, Jordan, Dad concluded. As I've informed you all individually, Jordan will be transitioning into the role of president and CEO over the coming year as I move toward retirement. I scanned their faces, expecting skepticism or resentment. Instead, I saw something unexpected: relief. Even excitement from some. The CFO, Martin Hayes, spoke first. Welcome aboard, Jordan. Your father speaks highly of your experience in the construction side. We're looking forward to your perspective. Others echoed similar sentiments. The head of development, Susan Chen, was particularly enthusiastic. "I've heard about your work on the Riverside project. Bringing that in under budget was impressive." Dad let the introductions continue for a few minutes before steering the conversation toward business. "Jordan will be spending time with each department over the coming months to understand your operations. Today is orientation, but starting tomorrow, he'll be fully engaged in the business." The meeting lasted an hour, covering current projects, financial standing, and immediate challenges. I asked questions where appropriate but mostly listened, absorbing the scale of what I was inheriting. When the team dispersed, Dad led me to what would become my office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. "This was going to be redecorated for you," Dad explained, "but I thought you might want to make those decisions yourself." The office was twice the size of my entire apartment, furnished with antiques and adorned with architectural models of the company's most significant projects. A desk that probably cost more than my car dominated one side, while a seating area with leather couches occupied the other. "It's a bit much," I admitted. Dad chuckled. "You can change everything if you want." This was my style, not necessarily yours. We spent the rest of the day reviewing the company structure, major projects, and financial statements. The numbers were staggering: assets, liabilities, cash flow that dwarfed anything I'd managed before. By late afternoon, my head was swimming. "That's enough for today," Dad said, noticing my expression. "This is a marathon, not a sprint. We have a year for the transition." As I prepared to leave, he added, "There's one more thing. Katherine's attorney called this morning." My stomach tightened. "And she's demanding a formal meeting to discuss the succession plan. Claims she was coerced into signing the agreement 8 years ago." "Was she?" Dad shook his head. "Absolutely not. She negotiated aggressively and received everything she asked for. We have documentation of the entire process, including emails where she outlined her terms. So what happens now? Our attorneys will handle it. Don't worry about Katherine. Focus on learning the business." But Katherine wasn't so easily dismissed. 3 days later, she demanded we meet at a coffee shop near her office. I agreed, hoping we might find some path forward. The upscale cafe was busy with lunch patrons when I arrived. Katherine was already seated at a corner table, dressed impeccably in a designer suit, her expression cold and professional. This was clearly an adversarial meeting, not a family reconciliation. "Katherine," I nodded, taking the seat across from her. "Jordan." She didn't smile. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. Of course, you're still my sister." She ignored this, opening her leather portfolio. "I'll be direct. The arrangement Dad outlined on Christmas Eve is unacceptable. I'm proposing an alternative that would be more equitable for both of us." "I'm listening," I said, though I already suspected where this was heading. 50-50 ownership, she stated. "We both receive equal shares of the company. I maintain my career at the firm. You continue in operations, and we hire a CEO to run day-to-day business." I sighed. "Katherine, that's not how Dad wants to structure the succession. He believes the company needs a single vision." "Dad isn't thinking clearly," she interrupted. "His health issues have clouded his judgment. His judgment seems perfectly clear to me." Katherine leaned forward. "Jordan, be reasonable. You have no experience running a company of this size. The board will never accept you as CEO. Actually, I've met with the executive team. They seem quite supportive, because Dad instructed them to be." Katherine's composure slipped momentarily. "Listen to me. This arrangement can't work. You'll be overwhelmed. The company will suffer, and Dad's legacy will be damaged. Is that what you want?" Before I could answer, the cafe door opened, and Thomas walked in, scanning the room until he spotted us. Katherine's expression soured further. "I told you to meet me after," she hissed as he approached. Thomas ignored her, taking the empty seat between us. "I thought it would be better if I joined from the beginning." He turned to me. Jordan, I want to apologize for Christmas Eve. The situation was handled poorly by everyone. Katherine stiffened. Don't apologize for me. I'm not. Thomas replied evenly. I'm apologizing for myself. He turned back to me. The truth is, I've been uncomfortable with Katherine's approach to this situation from the start. Thomas. Katherine's voice rose enough to draw glances from nearby tables. It's time for honesty, Katherine. Thomas's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with her agitation. Jordan, your sister has been fixated on controlling the company since Christmas. It's become unhealthy. It's not unhealthy to want what's rightfully mine, Katherine snapped. But it's not rightfully yours, Thomas countered. You made an agreement. You received substantial compensation. Now you're trying to renege. Because you don't like the outcome. Katherine's face flushed with anger. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of reality, Thomas replied. And the reality is, you signed an agreement, received millions in benefits, and now want to change the terms. No court will support that position. I watched this exchange with growing surprise. Thomas had always struck me as someone who defaulted to Katherine's position in family matters. Katherine gathered her papers. This conversation is pointless if my own husband is going to undermine me. Katherine, please, I started. But she was already standing. My attorney will be in touch, she said coldly, before storming out of the cafe. Thomas remained seated, looking weary. I'm sorry about that. She's not thinking clearly right now. Has she been like this since Christmas? He nodded. Obsessed. Barely sleeping. Constantly strategizing how to challenge the agreement. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I think your father made the right decision. Katherine is brilliant at law, but she has no interest in development or construction. Her only motivation is ownership, not stewardship. His honesty surprised me. Thank you for saying that. Just give her time, Thomas advised. Eventually, she'll accept reality. The weeks that followed proved transformative. Each day at Wilson Development taught me something new about the business my father had built. I shadowed executives, visited properties, reviewed financial models, and sat in on negotiations. The learning curve was steep, but my construction background provided a foundation that proved invaluable. Dad watched my progress with growing confidence. You're picking this up faster than I expected, he remarked one evening as we reviewed a potential acquisition. I have a good teacher, I replied. You have good instincts, he countered. That can't be taught. My personal life was evolving too. Jennifer and I grew closer, her steady support grounding me as I navigated this new reality. I moved from my Somerville apartment to a modest condo in Back Bay, an upgrade but not extravagant. I still drove my Ford truck, still wore my Timberland boots on site visits. Some things wouldn't change, regardless of my new position. Katherine eventually stopped threatening legal action, though our relationship remained fractured. Thomas occasionally reached out, reporting that she was gradually coming to terms with the situation. I hoped time would heal this wound, though I knew it might leave a permanent scar. As winter turned to spring, I found my footing. The executive team began bringing decisions directly to me, rather than routing everything through Dad. Employees greeted me with genuine respect, not just deference to the owner's son. I began implementing changes, modernizing systems, improving benefits for workers, launching a scholarship program for employees' children, pursuing construction trades. Dad watched it all with quiet pride. You're doing well, son, he told me one Friday afternoon as we finished our weekly review. Better than I could have hoped. Coming from Harold Wilson, this qualified as effusive praise. I'm just building on your foundation, I replied. That's what legacy is supposed to be, he said. Each generation building on what came before. Adding, improving, never just maintaining. His words stayed with me as I drove home that evening. Legacy, responsibility, building on foundations. The metaphors of construction applied to family and business alike. Perhaps that was what Dad had seen in me all along, not just the ability to manage projects, but to understand the deeper meaning of building something that lasts. 1 year after that fateful Christmas Eve, Wilson Development held its annual holiday party at the Four Seasons Hotel. As the newly installed president and CEO, my father had accelerated the transition. After seeing my progress, I stood at the podium, addressing 400 employees and their guests. When my father founded this company 41 years ago, he started with nothing but a pickup truck and determination. I began, looking out at the assembled crowd. Today, Wilson Development stands as one of New England's premier commercial real estate companies, with properties valued at over $1 billion. I paused, finding my father in the crowd, seated beside my mother at the head table. He looked healthier than he had in years, the reduced stress of semi-retirement agreeing with him. But the true value of this company isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the buildings that will stand for generations. The spaces where people work, learn, and heal. The communities we help create and strengthen. I raised my glass. To Harold Wilson, who built not just a company, but a legacy of integrity, excellence, and vision. The room erupted in applause, as Dad acknowledged the toast with a nod, emotion visible even from a distance. The company had thrived under the transition. Our portfolio had grown by 12%, employee retention had improved, and we'd launched 3 major new projects that promised to reshape Boston's waterfront. The executive team had embraced my leadership style, which balanced my father's traditional approach with more progressive policies. As the evening wound down, I found myself at the bar beside Thomas, who had attended without Katherine. She had declined her invitation, still not ready to publicly acknowledge the new reality. She's doing better, Thomas offered without prompting, starting to focus more on her own career again. The partner track is looking promising. I'm glad to hear it, I said sincerely. And the two of you? Better, he nodded. Time helps. So does therapy. Has she mentioned wanting to talk? Thomas hesitated. She's not there yet. But last week, she asked how you were doing. That's progress. It was a small step, but significant coming from Katherine. Tell her the door is always open. I will. He finished his drink. For what it's worth, Jordan, you've proven your father right. The company is thriving under your leadership. Even Katherine has noticed, though she wouldn't admit it directly. 2 days later, I received a text from Katherine, the first direct communication in months. Coffee tomorrow? Same place as last time. When I arrived at the cafe the next day, Katherine was already seated, looking more subdued than our last encounter. She wore minimal makeup, and her typically perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She seemed tired, but calmer. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. Of course. An awkward silence followed. Katherine stared into her coffee cup as if it contained answers to unasked questions. Thomas says you're doing well, I offered. Making progress toward partner, she nodded. I'm up for consideration next year. Youngest ever, if it happens. It will. You've always been exceptional at everything you set your mind to. Katherine looked up, studying my face for signs of sarcasm. Finding none, she relaxed slightly. The company seems to be doing well under your leadership. It is, I confirmed. Though most of the credit goes to Dad's foundation and the executive team. You don't need to be modest, she said. I've heard about the changes you've implemented, the scholarship program for employees' kids, the sustainability initiatives, the profit-sharing plan. Those weren't Dad's ideas. I shrugged. Different generation, different priorities. Jordan, Katherine began, then paused. I need to say something, and it's not easy for me. She took a deep breath. I was wrong about you. You were the right choice for the company. The admission clearly cost her considerable pride. Katherine had never been one to acknowledge mistakes. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot coming from you. Don't get too excited, she warned, a hint of her old sharpness returning. I still think Dad's approach was unnecessarily secretive and manipulative. He could have been transparent from the beginning. Maybe, I conceded. But would either of us have developed the way we did if we'd known what was coming? Katherine considered this. Perhaps not. She stirred her coffee absently. I've been thinking a lot about why I reacted so strongly. It wasn't really about the money, or even the company. What was it about? Validation, she admitted. All my life, I thought Dad's approval came from achievement, perfect grades, prestigious schools, important career. I was building my entire life around earning his respect. Then suddenly, it turned out you had it all along. Without even trying. I wasn't trying to earn his respect, I said. I was just doing what I thought was right. Exactly. Katherine nodded. And that's what he valued. More than all my calculated achievements. It's been a difficult realization. We talked for nearly 2 hours, beginning the slow process of rebuilding our relationship. There were still raw edges, moments of tension, when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But beneath it all, I sensed a genuine desire to move forward. As we prepared to leave, Katherine asked, "Will you be at Mom and Dad's for Christmas Eve?" Of course. Jennifer and I both. Thomas and I will be there too, she said. It won't be like last year, I promise. I'm glad to hear it. The healing had begun, not just with Katherine but within our entire family. Mom and Dad had become more open about their feelings and expectations. Family dinners featured actual conversations rather than performances. The old patterns hadn't disappeared entirely, but they'd been acknowledged, which made them less powerful. As for me, I'd found my footing both as a CEO and as a person. The sudden wealth and responsibility hadn't changed my fundamental values, but it had given me opportunities to express them on a larger scale. The scholarship program for construction trades was just the beginning. We'd launched initiatives to develop affordable housing alongside our luxury projects, created apprenticeships for at-risk youth, and implemented industry-leading sustainability standards. Jennifer and I got engaged in October. We planned a small ceremony for the spring. Nothing like Katherine's extravaganza. Jennifer didn't want that, and neither did I. What mattered wasn't the wedding but the marriage we would build together. Dad continued to serve as chairman of the board, but had genuinely stepped back from daily operations. His health improved, and he and Mom started traveling more, checking destinations off their long-deferred bucket list. He seemed more relaxed than I'd ever seen him, the burden of the company no longer weighing on his shoulders. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after the letter that changed everything, our family gathered again in my parents' home. The decorations were just as elaborate, the meal just as gourmet, but the atmosphere had transformed. Katherine and Thomas arrived on time, bearing thoughtful gifts. Jennifer fit seamlessly into the family dynamic, her warmth and authenticity helping to dissolve old tensions. The gift exchange was modest. Compared to previous years, we'd all agreed to focus on thoughtfulness rather than extravagance. Katherine gave me a vintage blueprint of Boston from the era when our great-grandfather had been a carpenter in the city, a subtle acknowledgement of our shared history and different paths. After dinner, Dad asked me to join him in his study. He closed the door and handed me a small box. "This isn't your Christmas gift," he explained. "This is something else entirely." Inside the box was an old worn house key attached to a faded leather tag. "This was the key to my first office," Dad explained. "A converted storage room above a hardware store in Dorchester. I kept it all these years as a reminder of where I started." I turned the key over in my hand, feeling its weight and history. "The greatest lesson I've learned in business and in life," Dad continued, "is that true wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you build that outlasts you. The structures, the relationships, the values you pass down." He placed his hand on my shoulder. "You understand that instinctively, Jordan. It's why you were always the right choice. even when you couldn't see it yourself. I'm still learning, I admitted. Every day. That's another lesson, Dad smiled. The learning never stops. The building never ends. As I rejoined the family in the living room, watching Jennifer laughing with Mom, seeing Katherine more relaxed than she'd been in years, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The letter that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning, the start of a new chapter for all of us. The true gifts hadn't been the company or the money. They'd been the lessons learned through the process. That character matters more than credentials. That hardship often builds strength, while privilege can create weakness. That family relationships, like buildings, require solid foundations, but also regular maintenance and occasional renovation. That true worth isn't measured in dollars, but in integrity, perseverance, and the courage to forge your own path. As we gather here today at the end of this story, I'd like to ask you a question. What unexpected gift has life given you that initially seemed like a burden, but ultimately made you stronger? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the most valuable gifts don't come in fancy packages. Thank you for listening. And remember, in life, as in construction, it's not the materials that determine a building's strength, but the integrity of its foundation.